Yes, thank you for the opportunity. So I'm Edna Owusu-Bempah. I'm presenting on the topic coaching, mentorship, and apprenticeship as knowledge management strategies in organizations. So my outline covers the purpose of the study all through till limitations and direction for future studies. So the ability of a business to be competitive in the modern global marketplace is greatly influenced by knowledge. And someone will ask, what is knowledge? So basically, knowledge is talking about understanding gained from information that is acquired, either through training, either through education, either through practice, either through theory. And when it comes to knowledge, it's assessed or it's believed that it increases the success of an organization if it's managed properly. So we can look at the DIKW model, which was propounded by Russell Ackoff, and that is looking at how data grows into wisdom. So data, looking at raw facts, now is processed further, it becomes information. And that information, when it's used over time, you gain experience. And once it becomes knowledge, and once you gain experience, that knowledge becomes wisdom. Wisdom in the sense that you're able to apply it, you're able to judge right. So as a business, if we want to be successful at what we do, according to Bollinger and Smith, to increase organizational knowledge base helps us to achieve organizational goals. So how do we manage knowledge in the first place? So the whole terminology of knowledge management was first birthed when Michael Porter was working on his Porter's 546 model on competitive advantage. And he posited that for organizations to generate value for their customers and to provide them with distinctive goods and services, there's the need for them to have some knowledge to be able to be informed about what they do and come out with distinctive goods and services. So it buttresses the fact that managing knowledge is very important. So the whole process of knowledge management implies that how are you going to acquire the knowledge in the first place? How do you store it? How do you share it? And how do you even apply it? And after you've applied it, how do you reuse that knowledge? So reusing your know-how is also very important. So in order for us to successfully manage knowledge, there's the need for us to have an action plan, which is the knowledge management strategy as an organization. So organizations are supposed to implement action plans that helps them to be productive and helps them to effectively manage their knowledge base. And in managing knowledge, some of the strategies covers mentoring, coaching, implementing knowledge databases, institutional repositories, assigning staff members tasks where their talents can be best utilized, and others. Apprenticeship can also be captured. So the purpose of this basically is that we want to examine the extent of the adoption of knowledge management strategies, which covers coaching, mentorship, and apprenticeship in organizations through a systematic review of literature in the area. So the whole study is a systematic review. So looking at the literature that we reviewed, we came across 3 schools of thought. So the first school of thought was a technological school that views knowledge as fundamentally technologically based, in that its knowledge is based on systems, on databases, and measurement devices. Then there's also the organizational school of thought that views knowledge as a phenomenon that is embedded in people, in social relationships, and influence the organizational structures and culture. So which presupposes that based on the organizational culture in a said organization, the individuals in there can share their knowledge base. Then the third school of thought is the business strategy school of thought, which also posits that knowledge can be viewed as a resource to a said organization. And if it's viewed as a resource, then it has to be managed appropriately. Then we can, as part of the review of the literature, we also came across the knowledge-based theory, which also postulates that knowledge should be treated as and intellectual capital in an organization. It should be treated as a strategic resource that forms a foundation for sustainable competitive advantage. And the whole idea of sustainability cannot be overemphasized. So if you're able to manage knowledge properly, it dovetails into the attainment of some of the SDG goals. And I would end by specifically going to those SDG goals. So for me to successfully carry out this research, I aligned to the PRISMA approach. So I use the PRISMA approach, and PRISMA stands for Preferred Reporting Items for Systematic Reviews and Meta-Analysis. That was the framework that I used. And in using the PRISMA approach, the study was conducted based on these subsections. We looked at we first of all identified the literature that we needed. We screened it. Then we looked at the eligibility of the selected literature. Then finally, we ended up with data extraction. So some of the databases that were set, the resources were from Scopus, Open Alerts, Crossref, Web of Science, and the Hazens published or Perish software was also utilized for this purpose. So starting from the identification phase, I myself as a researcher, I found some relevant studies using the following keywords: knowledge management strategies, coaching, mentorship, and apprenticeship. And these were the key search words. Then at the screening stage, I collected related articles to the said topic. And afterwards, I generated a table with the search strategy for all the articles. And the table also captured the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria. So the inclusion, when you look at the table, I'm so sorry I'm not able to share it. The table tells you the search strategy item and the search strategies that I use. So databases are listed. The language is English, time filter 2000 to 2023, special filter, global, inclusion criteria. It should be a peer-reviewed paper, a paper published from 2000 and above, published in the English language. Then the exclusive criteria, the paper should be conducted outside. If the paper is conducted outside the knowledge management area, it's not included. And if the study was published before the year 2000, it wasn't included as well. And the report, abstracts, commentaries, minutes, and letters editors were not included also. Then when it comes to the eligibility aspect of which is the third section, I as a researcher also looked at the pertinent articles covering the year of publication, the study's title, the objectives for the paper.
I would just like to remind you that we have only 6 minutes left. So you saw that because we're still in the very early slides. So we only have 6 more minutes left. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So we had 100 articles, and at the eligibility stage, we eventually arrived at 50 articles. Then when we got to the final stage, which was the data extraction stage, the abstract of the selected articles were read. Then the full text were also later read. So the results, according to the results in table 2, you can see that we had 50 articles in all. Then based on these articles, we also found these themes and sub-themes. So KMS, which is knowledge management strategy, was the main theme that was generated. Then the sub-themes that I discovered were mentoring, coaching, apprenticeship. And an interesting sub-theme that was also discovered was communities of practice. And these were sub-themes that came out. So when it comes to mentoring, we can say that mentoring involves an existing relationship between an expert and a novice. And a study by Bryant figured out that when employees are mentored by their peers, they are able to acquire higher levels of knowledge. So it implies that mentoring it will be preferred if employees are mentored sometimes by their peers. Then apprenticeship entails implementation of a planned learning program to impart skills. And coaching focus on a growth process where a coach assists a coachee in attaining set goals. Then the bit of communities of practice is a new thing that is evolving, where a group of individuals who are bonded by a common interest, irrespective of their statuses, are able to share their knowledge and their skills. So another key finding was that a number of the studies that were carried out on KM strategies were done in Asia, Africa, and the North Americas. Then looking at the research approaches that were adopted, 32 of the reviewed articles adopted a qualitative approach, 14 of the articles reviewed adopted a quantitative approach, and 4 of the reviewed articles adopted a mixed method approach. In terms of the discussion and conclusions, it's advisable that organizations apply knowledge appropriately, because over the past 22 years, several articles have been written on knowledge management, but there's still a paucity of literature. Not so much has been done in the area. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, in the University of Zambia, there's no succession plan per se. The students, there's no coaching and mentorship scheme in place per se. And the same applies to some institutions, higher education institutions in Mauritius. Even though they know about knowledge management strategies, they don't really have a documented knowledge management strategy in place. So it's important that institutions pay more attention to knowledge management strategies. Then a study by Cornwall deliberately put together middle-level managers, female middle-level managers, and they gave them male mentors. And at the end of the study, they figured out that the middle-level managers who were female, when they were mentored by male colleagues who were top managers, were encouraged to aspire for higher heights. So there's a need for us to implement a mentoring scheme as organizations by pairing middle-level female managers with top-level managers to encourage them to aspire for higher heights. And also, there's a need to introduce ICT, which some organizations are already doing. But we also have to pay more attention to introducing ICT in managing knowledge. Because I as a researcher, I identify some challenges. Time constraints is a challenge. So when we resort to just face-to-face coaching, people might not have the time to coach for example, their subordinates face-to-face. So ICT is an option to resort to help us. So the future lies in how businesses can implement knowledge management techniques and boost productivity and spur innovation. So Ojo in 2016 investigated knowledge management in Nigerian universities, and he came up with a module. And in the module, he says that, first of all, you as an organization, you should identify knowledge, store the knowledge, share the knowledge, apply it, and eventually assess it. When you assess it, you can tell how effective that knowledge that you applied was. And I believe that organizations can adopt this module. Then there's also the SESI module by Nonaka and Takeuchi, which looks at socialization, externalization, combination, and internalization of knowledge. And when all these four is achieved, we are able to transform knowledge from the state of it being tacit, sitting in the heads of people, to when it's explicit, codified, put in books, put in different forms that can be used by different individuals. So I conclude by saying that relationships based on mentoring have endured over time, and these will continue growing and multiplying. And this is made possible through storytelling, expert interviews, apprenticeship, socialization. And when we add onto that by implementing deliberately knowledge management strategies in our organizations, it will go a long way to help us to be productive. And we can also argue that we should bring in the whole idea of artificial intelligence in managing our knowledge. So for future studies can be directed towards technology and knowledge management strategies such as e-coaching and e-mentoring. Since not much has been done, we can also look at e-coaching, e-mentoring, knowledge management strategies, and artificial intelligence. Thank you so much.